This is Mark Sobel, U.S. Chair, OMFIF. Today, OMFIF and I are delighted to welcome back Vladyslav Rashkovan, Ukraine's representative in the IMF, and a former Ukrainian central bank deputy governor who played a key role in contributing to cleaning up Ukraine's banking system. I knew Vlad when I was on the IMF board, and he was a fantastic representative for his country then, and he remains so today. He has been kind enough to join me a few times in the past to keep us abreast of economic developments and prospects for Ukraine, and he has kindly agreed to do so again today. So welcome, Vlad.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's drill down. Ukraine was one of the focal points at the recent IMF World Bank spring meetings, perhaps not so much as Mr. Trump and his policies, but still a key focal point. And I guess a few weeks prior to the meetings, the IMF Executive Board completed the 7th review of Ukraine's extended program. So maybe you could tell us a bit about all of that.
Yeah, thanks. As you know very well, we name the spring meetings or annual meetings as a Davos for central bankers, and as these, it went pretty well. It was very well crowded by, 180 countries, I think, came there, and I think 11,000 people were visiting this time, which is, is a good crowd of people. You have all central bankers and ministers nearby. We also use the event itself. The Prime Minister comes every spring now since the Russian brutal war started in Ukraine, and he has also a pretty busy agenda as well. It is a good opportunity for him, for governor minister, to meet with heads of IMF, World Bank, EBRD, European Investment Bank. We also had already the 7th roundtable on Ukraine. It's done in World Bank. It was again on the level of ministers. It's a ministerial level. There were ministers like new head of Treasury, Scott Bessent was there, was very, vocal on the role the IMF and World Bank played in keeping Ukraine, well in this situation, and also praising the job done by Ukrainian authorities. So it was very positive event as for the coordination. The Governor Pishny and Minister Marchenko had also extensive number of meetings with their counterparties in most of G7 countries, central banks, ministries, but not only meeting like G7. The Governor Pishny met not like only with Lagarde or Bundesbank and Banque de France leaders, but also like with governor of central bank of Argentina, for example. Just to understand the commonality of the programs, the similarities of the programs, and Argentina is number one now country program for the fund. Ukraine is number 2. So we also organized the good meeting of the governor with G7 directors and European directors of the fund, and the minister with G7 and European directors at the World Bank. So just to brief them, begin to thank them also for supporting Ukraine. And for sure, we had the meetings with a mission. Probably we had like 10 meetings on the different levels of deputy ministers to discuss the 7th review and prepare for the 8th review. On top of that, the Oksana Markarov, the ambassador, and the Ukrainian House organized the 2nd already Innovation Day, where a lot of people came to see what Ukraine is doing, to have a debate. For example, I was moderating a debate there on the preparedness of the financial sector for the post-war reconstruction. So in a nutshell, we saw a lot of support, a lot of work has been done, a lot of work is still in front of us, a lot of old and new contacts. So as I said, as IMF Davos was successful, but what I missed is the spring meetings themselves. Meeting a lot of the events there. Unfortunately, agenda was very rich, a lot of events, presentations, lectures, etc. But I missed most of them because of these bilateral, multilateral meetings. But every time I hope that I will make it next time. You're muted, Mark.
Maybe you could tell us a little bit about where Ukraine stands in terms of its macroeconomic situation. As I mentioned, you just completed the 7th review, and you have a very challenging environment to maintain stabilization given the war and its costs and demands on your country?
Yeah, the seventh review was a record one for Ukraine. We never went so deep in the IMF program, and this has both pluses and minuses probably. As a plus, IMF is strongly placed in the center of the safety net for Ukraine. As you know, the exogenous shocks caused by the Russian war, led to significant economic problems. We discussed it with you in the previous meetings that the economy went down, there was a high inflation, devaluation, but thanks to the IMF program, thanks to donors and other partners which supported Ukraine, we managed to preserve macrofinancial stability. The economy is slightly growing. The inflation was contained in 23, 24. Now is a little bit going up because of the problems we have on the labor shortage, and therefore the companies have to pay more to people in order to find the right labor, especially when they relocate business from east, south, central to more to the western Ukraine. And also energy, that Russia ruined like 80% of our thermal generation, 60% of the hydro generation, and therefore this becomes a big obstacle for the enterprise even, to start growing the production in other parts because we have a limited energy supply. Hopefully, after the war finishes, we will take control of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant, which could, provide us up to 6 gigawatt of energy, so which would help us, to grow our to potential GDP. As I said, the IMF keeps the macro frame for Ukraine, focusing on monetary policy, fiscal policies, and other countries somehow outsourced to the IMF surveillance of those economic policies, as you know, and it works pretty well. As a result of the coordinated efforts of the government and IMF, macrofinancial stability has been preserved. Still the financing gap is pretty high, is around $150 billion. And while IMF committed about $15.6 billion support, other donors committed the rest of money, and they deliver. And they deliver because, as I keep saying on the board, we have this triangle. The authorities perform, the IMF does their job, and the partners do their part of the job. So we have a strong EU facility program, for 50 billion euro. There's a set of conditionalities there, which are also aligned with a IMF program. We have ERA loan initiative, another $50 billion backed by the revenues from immobilized Russian assets. And this money also flow to Ukraine now. And we have other programs with Norway, with South Korea, with World Bank and others, which also contribute to financing Ukraine. The minus is also coming from the fact that IMF is in the center of safety net, and everybody looks at IMF. And as you know very well, the IMF is pretty well-functioning bureaucracy with a lot of rules, a lot of internal constraints, limitations. One of the major elements for the program is, let's say, end of the war. And this was supposed to be some sort of the threshold. So before the end of the war, we deal more with macro-financial stability, but after the end of the war, we need to focus more on structural reforms, and those structural reforms should lead to such a IMF term, external viability, which means that you need to demonstrate that the country can live without IMF program. I think it's a little bit of weakness of IMF rules in this specific issue, because in reality, as this program is under exceptional uncertainty, which also was a policy changed in 2023, in order to accommodate these kind of cases when you have exogenous factors, exogenous shocks. So Ukrainian authorities do their job, and as we know, IMF does the job, partners do their job, and as we know, this leads to the good results. So it means that IMF program works. And without IMF program, it would be not possible, to sustain these. And I gave in February a lecture at Princeton with a class of Harold James there, Professor Harold James, and my title of the lecture was "The Program Which Saved Ukraine," and I strongly believe in that. But the shock is still exogenous. So whenever we do macroeconomically and the monetary and financial fiscal policies, we don't finish the war. It depends now more on Russia, and we hope there will be, also moderated by U.S. president, by U.S. authorities, with the support of European leaders who have been also in Ukraine during last weekend, that we will bring closer to the end of the war, and hopefully we may reach the ceasefire, hopefully maybe even this week. But exogenous factor as of today is still there, and National Bank or Ministry of Finance cannot fix that. While IMF is looking at this a little bit more conservatively, saying, okay, if you don't do that, I mean, we need to think how the program works further. And so far it works, you know, and we moved several times already the end of the war threshold, and also we do now. But this also leads every time to review of the macro framework. And I believe we need to do it again, you know, for the 8th review. But again, even under the renewed macro framework, it works. As I said, the G7 partners, they are coordinating themselves, and with IMF in the center, and so far it works well. Macro-financial stability is there.
Thanks for that. You know, I think the combination of Ukrainian performance, the fund support, and donor efforts to contribute have been remarkably successful in maintaining stabilization in an extraordinarily difficult environment. And you keep referring to exogenous shock, but that is Russia's barbaric war on Ukraine. So what you mentioned donors several times. What is the status of donor coordination? How's it organized now, and how can it be improved?
Yeah, you may remember, again, we also discussed this, that while IMF plays this an important catalyst role, and I also say this to SPR department at the fund, that they need to learn more, because this is a great example how IMF plays this catalytic role for Ukraine. But still, the donor coordination is important as well. And you may remember that in October 22, there was that time Berlin conference, which has been hosted by Chancellor Scholz that time, and Kristalina Georgieva was also there. So that time, the Ukrainian authorities came with an idea of this donor coordination platform. The time it was named Multi-Donor Coordination Platform. Now it's Ukrainian Donors Platform, UDP. And IMF at that time supported that, from stage. Kristalina Georgieva did it. And later G7 leaders agreed in Japan to create this donor platform. Since then, I'm really happy that the platform is there. It's already met 13 times, which means there is already institutional process behind. And this institutional process works like every 60 to 90 days, a group of 25 plus countries, plus I think 8 or 9 international institutions. They come in one place, either virtually or physically. Last time it was in 2nd of April, was in Kiev. And they sit there and for a day, in a structured way, with a structured agenda, discuss different elements of Ukrainian support, starting from budgetary support, humanitarian support, reconstruction support. They're not touching the military support, because military is under the Rammstein initiative, which is now under the NATO coordination. And actually, while we were creating this platform, and I was one of the fathers of that, we tried to copy the Rammstein model, So far it works pretty well. Unfortunately, there are some weaknesses of the platform itself. The weakness number one is that the platform is more like a place, is a forum. You come there to discuss. So the Ukrainian authorities usually, there is a steering committee. Ukrainian authorities bring the agenda. Later they filled in this agenda with the content, with the data, with different analytics. There are different working groups which contribute to that, which are working in between the meetings, and this is pretty well working, But still, people come to the meeting, they discuss, and there is no any product, which is coming from the platform itself. So my idea when we were designing initially, that this kind of platform should deliver something as a product, as a result, as a memo, as a report, which later should go to the leaders, of G7 or G7 ministers, G7 ministers, who meet at least 4 times per year twice during the spring meetings and annual meetings, and twice during the other different G7 initiative, G7 meetings. Therefore, to borrow some part of the time, structured time during those meetings to discuss that report, and therefore, to take decisions based on that. We don't have that, so everybody comes to the meeting. There is a discussion, very rich, and let everyone, like 100+ people who come to the meeting, leave the meetings with their own notes and come to their capitals. I think so far it works because we don't have much reconstruction, structural reconstruction, which, as you know, the World Bank renewed their damage assessment, which now is already 4th version, and there is a $524 billion for Ukraine needs for reconstruction. And if you are entitled or focused to find this kind of money, also both of the private sector and public money, different types of resources, this will not work. So my idea is that we need to think how this platform should evolve further, and we can borrow some lessons from the Marshall Plan for Europe after the post-World War. That time there was created the so-named Economic Cooperation Administration, ECA, which later led also to Organization for European and Economic Cooperation, created a little bit later for administering Marshall Plan. So we need to have something for sure of lessons learned after that with other different conflicts, but we need to take something from there, and similar to that role played by these institutions like 80 years ago. We need to create something. I name it the Ukrainian Reconstruction Modernization Agency, and could develop this kind of strategic initiatives based on the experience we have with a donor platform, but to do it instead of once meeting per 60, 90 days, just to work 100% of time, 24/7, for 5-10 years with some set of sunset clause, and these people who are now, like invoice for reconstruction, they should become, board members, heads of departments, and to work on that, definitely with some financial resource for that, but mostly to coordinate all the international aid and all the technical assistance, which will be needed very much for rebuilding Ukraine. And this is very much important because it's not only about the ideas of like budgetary support. We'll need to rebuild new cities. We need to build, new railways, new airports, and we need to have the best experts to bring to Ukraine, both private sector but also from public institutions. Someone should coordinate that part. We are missing now that element. But I hope that we'll be able to discuss this during the next Ukrainian Recovery Conference in Rome in July.
So what you were just saying about the need for ongoing coordination, that goes well beyond when the war should hopefully be over. So what do you have a vision of the post-war Ukrainian economy?
Yeah, it's my immediate answer would be for sure I do, but it doesn't matter much because the vision should be shared. And that's why you need to create the shared vision in Ukraine, and this vision should be shared also with partners. I mean, for sure, if you want to rebuild the energy sector, this will be a decentralized energy sector, not centralized. There will be for sure the more green sector, green economy, rather than again going back to thermal, even if you may have an access to coal. Okay, but in the end. The Ukraine currently is focusing in parallel on many topics. So for sure, as you properly said, we still need to win the war and to ensure macro-financial stability. Win the war is army and Ramstein. Macro-financial stability is IMF, European Commission, and donor coordination. But later, as soon as you go from there, you come to that, you need the reconstruction, you need to modernization of the economy, you need to continue democratization process, you need to continue with a structural economic reforms, for sure resolving Ukrainian problems with demography, which is because they are very heavy. And in the end, with a strong anchor, all of this should pave the way to European Union accession. And this is a strong anchor in Ukraine, probably only one. A strong anchor in Ukraine is European accession. We missed our European train in 90s, and I would say in 1984 when the wave started, and therefore we missed the train in 2004. But we cannot miss this train now. So How to come there? You may remember, Yaroslav Hasek, they had the novel, the Good Soldier Strike, and there was in the book it was about the First World War. It was saying we will meet at 6 p.m. after the war. So first thing is we need to meet at 6 p.m. after the war, and I say it's what is the next day after the peace, not after the war, but next day of the peace. And there is an initiative to focus on like 90 days plan, what you need to do immediately after the sustainable ceasefire reached, and this should pave the way towards more economy of the future of Ukraine post-war. There is one potential constraint to that, as you know, as I said about democratization. Ukraine is a democratic country, and we definitely seek to organize elections, after the martial law will be lifted. As you know, during the martial law, the constitution forbids to do this. So as soon as the martial law is lifted, we will organize elections. And as you know, any elections bring a lot of more, I don't want to say populistic, I would say popular ideas about the economy. And I hope that those ideas, they will not contradict both to IMF program, but also to this kind of idea of the economy of the future. But looking at the economy of the future, again, I don't have, we will not have time now to discuss it probably in details, but there are many topics, many questions for which we need to find answers, how to increase productivity in Ukraine. This is also the topic for Draghi report in Europe, and I'm sure Ukraine being a member of European Union in the future, we need to already to focus on that topic together, like with Letta report on the single market. We need to understand how to integrate our companies to the European value chains. We need to think how to elevate our propensity to save and to invest, because we consume a lot. But we need to convert our savings towards the longer term investments in Ukraine. We need to work still on the issues of demographic challenges, as I said, energy efficiency. So there are many open topics which we need to look at these. I'm sure there are many answers which are already in place, but I believe, and I try to push for that, that we could, and I discussed this in the Wilton Park conference, which we did, I think in March or April in UK, that we need to organize probably a group which would be led by IMF, World Bank, EBRD, EIB, European Commission, OECD, plus Ukrainian authorities, plus think tanks, major think tanks, put them in 3 days to Wilton Park or maybe some mountains in Ukraine, and to focus in a structured way on those kind of policies. And later, everybody should the government should take on board what is committed, and the partners, IMF, World Bank, OECD, should take their ideas on board as well. And this would, and to get there for the new future IMF program, future World Bank program, future EU program. And I think this is possible, as IMF program currently shows that we can work in this kind of triangle, and we need to continue working that under the coordination donor platform, which we need to evolve.
Okay, thanks for that. Since time is running short, last question. We could be here for hours on it, but where do we stand from Ukraine's vantage point on immobilized Russian assets? What are the next steps, and do you see them playing a role in your country's reconstruction?
Yeah, it's a good question, and we discussed it in the past. There are still several, maybe I would say, open questions to be addressed here. And first one for sure is, can we confiscate the assets? The answer is absolutely yes, and we should do that. It's not a legal question, it's a political question. And the politicians, G7 leaders, they took a very good decision on air loans last year. It's very good, thank them. And they need to be a little bit more brave now to make the next step. And so this is an important question. So can we confiscate? The answer is yes. The question is later, how you do this? There are plenty of the legal options proposed now, and let's not go maybe now in details of that. This is a separate discussion, but we can select from that menu of options how you deal with that. The third option is later, okay, as soon as you take money, where do you place them later? Again, there are different options. You can put them in some sort of the trust fund of the World Bank or EBRD. You can put them in special European Union fund. You can put them in the national funds. You can put them in some sort of escrow account. You can create a Marshall Plan for Ukraine, or you can even not touch them themselves, but you can issue the bonds. There is one of the proposals. You can issue the bonds, which could be backed by this still money, as themselves, not by the revenue flow from them, but by the assets themselves. And later you need to come to the question: okay, how you give this money to Ukraine? Again, there are different options. There is a so-named international compensation mechanism, which has been developed in Hague. There is a register of claims there. There are both Ukrainian individuals, Ukrainian enterprises, the international companies can also claim the damage which they received from the Russian brutal war. And later you come with a tribunal, which is, again, during the last weeks, there was a long discussion also about the tribunal. And later you need to create a fund which would, finance those claims. This could be one of the options as well. To provide this is not only to Ukrainians. You can develop, as I said, some sort of Marshall Plan which will finance reconstruction, and probably working with these Ukrainian Reconstruction Modernization Agency in the future. Or you can give it directly to Ukraine. I think to give directly just a full amount of money in one shot would be complicated, even from absorption capacity in Ukraine. But to connect this money, with specific reconstruction projects, I think it's a correct approach. Again, as I said, it's more political decision now. First, other topics are more technical, and I'm sure we will be able to resolve. There is a lot of the bright minds in the world who can do that.
Thanks. Some people do say it's a legal issue. I think that they need to find some new lawyers. And then, of course, however the money is used, there needs to be really strong, transparent governance arrangements surrounding that. Well, you are busy. You've been generous with your time. I want to thank you for joining us. And I'd like to, again, underscore that I marvel at the bravery of the Ukrainian people, its soldiers, the ability of the country to pursue market reforms and maintain stability amid the very difficult times, this exogenous shock that you referenced. So best of luck to you in your future endeavors. I'm sure we'll gladly have you join us again to keep us abreast of developments. So have a good day, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Mark, and thanks again to all the international partners who support us and the US government as well. Thanks a lot.